South Park has, historically, fallen victim to some pretty awful games being based on the franchise. For some reason, developers in the past have totally failed to capture what makes South Park so great as a TV show, with gameplay ranging from average to dire. However, ever since its reveal in 2012, fans have dared to hope that Stick of Truth would break the trend, and give South Park the great video game it's always deserved.
Well, I think that's everything.
We did it, hun. We're really moved in.
Stick of Truth certainly looks the part. In fact, considering the source material, I can't think of many ways in which it could be improved. It looks beautifully crappy, and may well be the first game in history in which a screenshot could easily be mistaken for one from the TV show. Great lengths have been taken to ensure authenticity, and it's obvious that not only Obsidian, but also Trey Parker and Matt Stone have poured their hearts into keeping the game totally faithful to the series. From the way the characters bob about, to the perfectly lip-synced voice acting, Stick of Truth's production values are equal to that of the television series. That's probably not exactly high praise for a franchise that prides itself on looking cheaply made. It immerses you into the world of South Park to a surprising extent though, in a way that I'd not thought possible considering the tongue-in-cheek, self-referential nature of the series. The sound is spot on, and all the proper voices for every character are accounted for. The in-game music is great too, with a lot of original compositions that perfectly mock those heard in more traditional fantasy RPG games. Another nice touch is the little jingle after you load into a game, matching the one heard in the series after an ad break has ended. Of course, we all knew that the game was going to look and sound the part. The real question is whether or not Stick of Truth is actually funny.
It's a school night, hon. You and your little druid friends need to—
We're not druids, Mom! We're fucking warriors and wizards!
Stick of Truth is an absolutely hilarious game, and unless you hate the television series, you're gonna have a good time. It may not have the tight satirical focus of a 25-minute episode, but the whole adventure features a constant barrage of hilarity, political incorrectness, and parody, and an excessive amount of farting. My main concern when going into Stick of Truth was whether the game could hold up as an RPG in its own right. If the gameplay doesn't work, then the comedy and authenticity becomes ultimately redundant. I'd probably have been quite happy if Stick of Truth had gone for traditional turn-based battles, like those seen in the early Final Fantasy games. Surprisingly though, Obsidian's choice of battle system is at once deep, twitchy, and quite unique. Stick of Truth's battle system is like a more strategic, less frustrating version of that seen in Double Fine's Costume Quest. Players take control of their own protagonist, along with one classic South Park character, each with their own specialisation. The battles are turn-based in structure, allowing players to use one item and one attack each turn. Where the system differs from other RPGs is when the player actually makes an attack or defends. Each attack has a specific button press associated with it. For example, when using a slingshot attack, the player has to spin their joystick, then press A at the appropriate time. As a side note, I'd advise using a controller over mouse and keyboard, as it can be a bit fiddly otherwise. I thought I'd get annoyed at these button presses and reaction tests in combat, but it actually adds a lot to the whole experience. It's extremely satisfying to block 3 consecutive attacks, then follow up with a bonus attack. Ultimately, it's strategy and preparation that wins battles in Stick of Truth, but there's always room for a clutch block or perfect strike. One of my least favourite parts about most turn-based RPG systems is that when battling a series of normal enemies, it can quickly fall into button-mashing drudgery, no brain power required. Fortunately, Stick of Truth has successfully avoided this, partly through the use of the reaction tests, and partly through the use of stances, armour and shields. Enemies can activate stances that makes them immune from certain types of damage, from ripostes that counter melee attacks, to reflecting ranged weaponry. Shielded enemies are immune from a certain number of attacks, making quick, light attacks the way to go, while armoured enemies are almost totally immune from anything but slow, heavy blows. All of this requires the player to constantly change up and rethink their tactics, and if there's a single best way to approach each battle, I haven't found it yet. Another feature worth mentioning is that fights can be made easier by taking out enemies outside of the battles themselves. For example, it's possible to shoot a light shade so that it drops and knocks out an opponent, or cause one to run in fear after setting them on fire with a lit fart. They don't make for the most heavyweight puzzles of all time, but they allow for nice environmental interaction, and the results are often amusingly unpredictable. The same interaction also allows players to find hidden collectibles, ranging from useful treasure to the various Chimpokemon figures scattered around. Finding hidden items in Stick of Truth is actually a worthwhile part of the game, and it doesn't feel like it exists just to artificially lengthen gameplay. Every object you find references something from the television series, from KFC chicken bones to Tweak Brothers coffee. It helps to provide fan service for the South Park diehards, while offering a fun challenge for casual viewers. Although my views on Stick of Truth are largely positive, it's not a game without problems. The opening hours, while funny, aren't particularly interesting with regards to story or gameplay. It's only after being abducted by aliens that the game really hits its stride. Stick of Truth is also a little easy, especially if you're competent at the reaction-based challenges in the combat. While it certainly requires brain power, and you'll run into some difficult boss battles, I rarely found myself getting stuck. Whether or not that's a major problem is really up to you. The PC release of the game ran very smoothly for me, and due to it being uncut, it's arguably the best version currently available. I was disappointed though with the lack of audio and video options, and they offer almost no customization. As it's a 2D title, it's not a huge problem, but at the very least a VSync option should have been included. South Park The Stick of Truth somehow manages to not only be a fantastic South Park game, but also a great solid RPG. With a playing time of around 15 to 20 hours, it's perhaps a little short compared to others in the genre, but I'd argue that when it comes to South Park's style of comedy, less is more. The deep rewarding combat and huge amounts of customization, combined with the faithful adaptation of South Park's look, sound and comedy, makes for one of the most entertaining RPGs I've played in a long time, and certainly the funniest. If you have even a passing interest in the TV show, or just want to play a solid funny game, South Park The Stick of Truth is well worth your time.
You should have never come here, humans. I am a level 10 bard, and with my loot, I shall power up my elven guards with magical songs of enchant. With magical songs of enchant. With magical songs of enchant. Magical songs of enchant. With magical songs of enchant. Magical songs of enchant. With magical songs of enchant. Magical songs of enchant. With magical songs of enchant. Magical songs of enchant. With magical songs of enchant.